Under the crystal chandeliers of Christie's auction house, two elderly men holding paddle numbers 47 and 53 locked eyes in such a way that the entire room fell dead silent. The paddle in Ozzy Osbourne's hand was trembling, but this time it wasn't from Parkinson's. In Ace Frehley's eyes burned that old rock star fire. On stage, under the spotlights, inside a glass case, there it stood. John Lennon's 1962 Gibson J160E acoustic guitar. When the auctioneer asked, $1.8 million from number 47, do I hear a higher bid? Ace slowly raised his paddle. $1.9 million. Ozzy turned, eyebrows furrowed, and whispered, Bloody hell, spaceman, are you serious? Ace shrugged. Dead serious, Oz. This guitar is a piece of history, and I want it. But nobody knew that this simple auction battle was about to end in a way no one expected. 2 hours earlier, Ozzy had entered the auction house with Sharon. Sharon, taking her husband's arm, had asked, Ozzy, what's the maximum we can spend on this guitar? Ozzy took a deep breath. Sharon, this isn't just a guitar. This is John Lennon's guitar. Without the Beatles, there would be no rock and roll. If I get this guitar at home, in our studio, I'll look at it every day and remember that all of us stand on their shoulders. Sharon smiled at her husband's sentimentality. All right, but still set a limit. Don't go over $2 million, okay? Ozzy nodded, but the gleam in his eyes showed he wasn't going to listen to that advice. When they entered the room, a familiar figure sitting in the front rows caught his attention. Long hair, a worn leather jacket, and a man studying the catalogue in his hands. It was none other than Ace Frehley. Ozzy froze and whispered to Sharon, What's Ace doing here? Sharon looked curiously. Maybe he's here for the same guitar. Ozzy's face tensed. No, this is my guitar. He must be here for something else. But when he approached and greeted Ace, he learned the truth. Ace, with a warm smile, said, Oz, man, great to see you here. Are you here for Lennon's guitar too? Ozzy went stiff. Yeah, Ace. And you? Ace nodded. Same thing, buddy. That guitar's going to be the crown jewel of my collection. The two men looked at each other, and in that moment, the first seeds of a sweet rivalry were planted. Ozzy, in that familiar, playful tone of his, said, Ace, mate, you know, I've been listening to the Beatles longer than you have. In 1963 in Birmingham, when I heard Please Please Me on the radio, my life changed. This guitar should be mine. Ace laughed. Oz, I respect that, but I was inspired by the Beatles before I formed Kiss in 1973. That guitar should go to a guitarist, not a vocalist. Ozzy responded with a mocking expression. A guitarist? Ace, you were flying around on stage in a space costume. I was biting the head off a bat. Who's more rock star? Both men laughed, but the determination in their eyes didn't fade. Sharon and Ace's wife Rachel sat side by side, watching these two men's egos battle it out. When the auction began, the room was packed. Collectors, museum representatives, wealthy fans, they were all there. But all eyes kept shifting between paddle numbers 47 and 53. The auctioneer introduced the Gibson. Ladies and gentlemen, before you stands the 1962 Gibson J160E, the guitar John Lennon used to record Love Me Do and P.S. I Love You. Starting bid is $800,000. Paddles shot up immediately. For the first few minutes, several different bids came in, but it quickly turned into a two-way race between Ozzy and Ace. When it hit $1 million, Ozzy raised his paddle. Ace immediately followed. $1.1 million. Ozzy, smiling. $1.2 million. The room tensed. People started whispering, two legends going head-to-head. A museum director muttered to his assistant, These prices are insane, but it's incredible to watch. Sharon leaned into Ozzy's ear and whispered, Ozzy, be careful. Don't blow our budget. Ozzy nodded, but his eyes were still fixed on the guitar. When it reached $1.5 million, the room was nearly silent. Ace raised his paddle. $1.6 million. Ozzy hesitated. He looked at Sharon, then at Ace, then at the guitar. Then he raised his paddle. $1.7 million. Ace frowned. This time his pause was longer. Rachel touched her husband's arm. Ace, this is a lot of money. Maybe you should let it go. Ace shook his head. No. This guitar is history. I can't walk away. And he raised his paddle. $1.8 million. Ozzy's heart raced. This was very close to the limit he'd discussed with Sharon. But in that moment, John Lennon's words came to his mind. Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. Maybe this was meant to be his moment. He raised his paddle. $1.9 million. Ace turned and looked at Ozzy, his eyes filled with a mixture of admiration and surprise. But then, something unexpected happened. Ace stood up and walked toward Ozzy. The room waited, curious about what he would do. Ace stopped in front of Ozzy and extended his hand. Ozzy, bewildered, asked, "What are you doing, mate?" Ace smiled. "Oz, I'm pulling out of this race. This guitar should be yours." Ozzy couldn't believe it. "What? Why?" Ace took a deep breath. "Because I may be a guitarist, but you're a storyteller. When you get this guitar, you'll tell people its story. I'd just play it for a while and then hang it on the wall, but you'll bring it to life." Ozzy took Ace's hand and stood up. His eyes were welling up, and his voice was trembling. "Ace, mate, this is incredible generosity. But I have something to say, too." Everyone in the room held their breath, waiting to see what these two legends would do. Ozzy turned to the auctioneer and said loudly, "Sir, I'm withdrawing my bid. Ace Frehley, at $1.8 million, should be the new owner of this guitar." The room gasped in shock. Sharon jumped to her feet. "Ozzy, what are you doing?" Ozzy, smiling, replied, "I'm doing the right thing, love. Ace is right. He's a guitarist. This guitar will be better in his hands." Ace, stunned, said, "Oz, no, I pulled out." "You take it." Ozzy shook his head. "No, Ace. I've been in the spotlight all these years. Now it's your time. This guitar is yours." The two men looked at each other, and then, in front of the entire room, they embraced. Applause erupted. People rose to their feet. This wasn't just an auction. This was two rock legends choosing friendship over ego. The auctioneer, his voice filled with emotion, asked, "Well, gentlemen, in that case, what shall we do? Mr. Frehley, is your $1.8 million bid still valid?" Ace remained silent for a long moment. His eyes moved from the guitar to Ozzy, then to the hundreds of people in the room. Then he turned to the auctioneer and said, "Sir, I'm completely withdrawing my bid. This guitar should belong to Mr. Osbourne." Ozzy laughed ironically. "Ace, this is turning into a proper game now. What's your angle, mate?" Ace responded confidently. "Oz, listen to me. This morning, coming here, I thought I'd do anything to win that guitar. But now I understand that this isn't just a competition. This is a test. And I passed. Because seeing you here, looking at that guitar with such passion, reminded me what really matters." Ozzy's voice trembled. "Ace, I don't know what to say." Ace squeezed his shoulder. "Then don't say anything. Just take that guitar and do the right things with John Lennon's legacy. I know you will." Sharon had moved closer, her eyes filled with tears. "Mr. Frehley, this is incredibly generous," she said. Ace smiled at Sharon. "No, Mrs. Osbourne, this is just the right thing. I've already got 50 guitars at home anyway. But Ozzy's need for this guitar is different. He'll bring it to life." The auctioneer, bewildered, asked, "So, Mr. Osbourne, do you accept the bid of $1.9 million? Ozzy looked at Ace, then at Sharon, then at the guitar. "Yes, I accept." The auctioneer struck the gavel. "Sold! John Lennon's 1962 Gibson J160E has been sold to Mr. Ozzy Osbourne for $1.9 million. Ozzy slowly lowered his paddle. His hands were trembling, but this time from pride. Ace came over and extended his hand. "Congratulations, Oz." The right person got it. Ozzy gripped his friend's hand firmly. "Ace, this is just the beginning. You and we're going to do something together with this guitar. I promise." Sharon hugged her husband, her eyes filled with tears. "Ozzy, This is a lot of money, but you're right. This is so much more than a guitar. Ozzy stroked Sharon's hair. I know, love. And this guitar won't rust away in a display case. We're going to bring it to life. Ace approached them. Oz, are you serious? Are we really going to play together? Ozzy smiled. Of course. You'll play the guitar, I'll sing. Just like the old days. But this time for something more meaningful. Ace's face lit up. Like what? Ozzy looked around at the people in the room, then turned back to Ace. Small, meaningful places. Charity work. Children's hospitals, nursing homes, music schools, places where people can't afford concert tickets but need music the most. After the ceremony, Ozzy and Ace went up on stage to receive that legendary guitar. The auctioneer carefully placed it in Ozzy's hands. Ozzy, for a moment, just looked at it. The texture of the wood, the shine of the strings. Every detail was a piece of history. Then he held it out to Ace. Want to play something, Ace? I'm not a guitarist. Ace took the guitar and gently touched the strings. That soft, melodic sound filled the stage. People held their breath. Ace closed his eyes and played the first few notes of Imagine. Simple, clean, emotional. At the press conference, journalists flooded the room with questions. One reporter asked, Mr. Osbourne, what do you plan to do with this guitar? Ozzy, in a relaxed manner, replied, I'm adding it to my collection. But this isn't the kind of collection that gets hung on a wall and forgotten. This guitar will be played. Ace and I, from time to time, will perform with this guitar at special events. Another journalist turned to Ace. Mr. Frehley, how do you feel about this idea? Ace smiled. I think it's brilliant. Ozzy and I, we've walked different paths for years, but music has always brought us together, and now, doing something together with this guitar, it's an honor. A music magazine reporter asked, Given this guitar's value, isn't it dangerous to put it at risk? Ozzy, with that familiar, sharp look in his eyes, said, Mate, John Lennon didn't make this guitar to sit in a display case. He made it to be on stage, to reach people. Yes, it's valuable, but its value isn't in its price, it's in its meaning. And if this guitar can make a child smile, if it can bring tears to an elderly person's eyes, then it's worth the risk. The room applauded quietly. These weren't just the words of a rock star, but of a visionary. The first event took place 3 weeks later, at Children's Hospital in Los Angeles, in the pediatric oncology ward. Ozzy and Ace arrived quietly. No press, no cameras, just 15 sick children and their families. Dr. Elena Rodriguez greeted them. Mr. Osbourne, Mr. Frehley, thank you so much for coming. The children have been eagerly waiting for you. Ozzy, with a humble smile, said, We're happy to be here, Doctor. These children are far braver than we are. When they entered the small playroom, the children were initially shy. Some were tired, some wore wigs, some had bandages. But in all their eyes, there was curiosity. Ozzy sat down on the floor, lowering himself to the children's level. Hello, kids. I'm Ozzy, and this is my friend Ace. Today we're going to show you a special guitar. This guitar used to be played by a very famous man. His name was John Lennon. Do you know him? A few children nodded. One of them, 8-year-old Emma, said, He's the man who sang Imagine. My mom always listens to it. Ozzy smiled. That's exactly right, smart girl. And today, Ace is going to play that song for you. Ace took the guitar back and began playing Imagine. Ozzy sang not into a microphone, but directly to the children. His voice maybe wasn't at its old strength, but the emotion was there. Imagine all the people living life in peace. The children listened quietly. Emma was leaning against her mother, tears streaming down her face, but they were happy tears. When the song ended, everyone in the room had a genuine smile on their faces for the first time in a long while. Afterward, Dr. Rodriguez pulled Ozzy and Ace aside to another room. Her eyes were filled with tears. You didn't just give these children music today. You gave them hope. Some of them hadn't smiled in months. I saw it today. That's priceless. Ozzy humbly said. "Doctor, we just played a song. The real heroes are those children and you. We just wanted to be here." As months passed, Ozzy and Ace made these events regular, once a month, sometimes twice, in different places. Once they played at a nursing home. When people in their 80s and 90s heard the Beatles songs, they were transported back to their youth. One man, through tears, said, "In 1963, this was the song I first danced to with my girlfriend." Another time they played at a music school for students from difficult financial backgrounds. The children were eager to see John Lennon's guitar. Ace showed them the guitar, told them about it, let some of them touch it. "This isn't just an instrument. This is a dream. And dreams grow when they're shared." Once they played at an Alzheimer's center. A woman who hadn't spoken in a long time, when Let It Be was played, suddenly remembered the lyrics and sang along with Ozzy. The nurses were shocked. "She hasn't said a word in months." A few years passed. Ozzy and Ace grew older. Parkinson's affected Ozzy more. Arthritis slowed Ace's fingers. But they never gave up. Sometimes they'd shorten the concerts. Sometimes they'd only play 1 or 2 songs. But every time they did it from the heart. People knew about their quiet generosity, but it didn't get much media attention. And they preferred it that way. This wasn't show business. This was being human. One day Ace called Ozzy. His voice was serious. "Oz, there's something we need to talk about. We're getting old. What happens to this guitar after us?" Ozzy thought quietly. Then, "Ace, I've made my will. After I die, this guitar will go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but with one condition. The plaque will read, 'Shared in life, cherished in memory.' Ozzy Osbourne and Ace Frehley's journey with Lennon's legacy. And you'll be featured on that plaque the same way, because this isn't just my story. It's our story." Ace's voice grew thick. "Oz, that's perfect. I was thinking the same thing. Thank you." One Sunday afternoon, at Ozzy's house, with just Sharon and Rachel, they sat by the fireplace. The guitar was beside them. Ace asked, "Should we play one more song?" Ozzy smiled. "Here Comes the Sun, George's song. There's hope in it." Ace took the guitar into his lap and began those familiar notes. Ozzy sang softly, his voice weak but peaceful. "Here comes the sun, and I say, it's all right." Sharon touched her husband's hand. Rachel leaned on Ace's shoulder. When the song ended, no one spoke. There was only the crackling of the fireplace and the quiet happiness of 4 old friends. Ozzy looked at Ace and nodded. "It was a good journey, mate." Ace smiled. "The best, Oz. The best." That night, the guitar sat on the side table. Tomorrow, maybe it would be loaned to a museum. Maybe to another charity event. But in that moment, it was simply the silent witness to 4 people, to music, and to friendship. And sometimes the most beautiful endings are the ones that are quiet, simple, and real. If this story reminded you of the meaning of generosity and friendship, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because sometimes the most beautiful moments happen where cameras don't reach. And true rock stars are remembered not just for the stage, but for the quiet kindnesses they leave behind.